Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Expanding Forward radio show. Conversations about juicy living. With your host, Carole Lewitski.
Welcome, everyone, to the Expanding Forward radio show. I'm your host, Carole Lewitski, and this is a call-in show, so if you'd like to call in, that number is 657-383-0934. If you're listening online, the chat room is now open, so feel free to comment or ask questions. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, you can go to blogtalkradio.com/expanding forward. And sign up for show reminders to catch the show live for future episodes. You can always connect with us on Facebook at Expanding Forward or contact me directly at carole@lewitski.com. Our topic today is loving our enemies. Is that really possible? You might want to pour yourself some tea and get comfortable for this one, because the perspectives you'll be hearing today you've likely never heard before, and it might just shake a few trees, just to give you a heads up. I grew up, like most of you can probably relate, being made to understand that there are good people and bad people, that there's a perpetrator and a victim, and then I was taught different ways to avoid being either one. So already in grade school, I found myself being witness to this. I remember sitting on the swing in the school playground when I was in grade 2, and sitting on the swing right next to me was the most feared bully of our elementary school, and I looked over at him and said, "Why do you do what you do? Why do you choose to be mean? Why can't you just be nice to the other kids, and then maybe you could have friends too?" And in my questioning, there really was genuine curiosity, almost like I wasn't buying into the idea that there was such a huge separation between the one we feared and ourselves, that somewhere in his eyes I could see pain. I also remember sitting beside my mom as she watched the 6 o'clock news, and it took all of 5 minutes of watching what was happening in our own city and around the world to be able to see that there were bigger versions of bullies and victims. My heart would always go out to the victims, of course, but I was still left wondering about the bullies that were once innocent children themselves, and how had they become the dictators or the head of government that misused money through greed and caused victims of poverty? Or what about the murderers with versions of their own crimes that, no matter what age we are, is impossible to understand? I also, from quite a young age, started seeing that the loving home I lived in wasn't a luxury all children were privy to. All it took was a visit to a friend's house to see the mother and her teenage boy fighting at the top of the stairs, a battle with one threatening the other to throw someone down the stairs, cursing and yelling words I had certainly never heard in my home. And I wondered about this boy and his mother, and how had they become this pair, bully and victim, perhaps even at times taking turns being one or the other. And then there was sexual abuse, which unfortunately was a topic I came to hear about and understand at too early of an age. Confused and later enraged at why anyone would do that to a child, I always wondered where forgiveness fit into all of that, and how anyone could reconcile with the idea that their own child had been violated that way, a lot of times right under their noses by someone they knew and even loved. Enemies can show up in our lives in various ways. Sometimes even those that we love can instantly become the enemy the second we feel threatened, and before we know it, our defenses go up. So then the question to ask is, who have we come to see as the enemy in our life? When we hear of all the atrocities happening close by and all around the world, or we personally get attacked, sometimes by coworkers, other times by family members, how are we to be okay with that? And how do we not stay up at night worrying that the chaos, acts of hatred or self-righteous behavior, and abuse of every kind won't come threaten our own life? Is it possible to move beyond being right, feeling like a victim, holding on to anger, resentment, rage, or fear towards those that have inflicted pain on us? Or worse yet, should we brace ourselves, protect ourselves towards any impending danger? What would it look like to live life in complete freedom, never to be entangled or affected by others' actions again? Before we even go there, why don't we bring on our guest for today? I'm not only thrilled, but honored to have Jennifer Hough be with us today to talk about this sensitive subject. If anyone can expand our hearts to see things differently, I know she can. I had the pleasure of meeting Jennifer in 2012 at one of her workshops here in Calgary, and then went on to travel with her to Peru, where she led a group of 24 women on a life-changing spiritual journey. Jennifer is a seer, alchemist, author, and facilitator of awakening. She assists us all to remember more deeply the reason we are here. Her multiple programs include spiritual adventures all over the world, her flagship program, Get Out of Your Own Way. Then there's the Academy of Human Superpowers, and her intensive program called Flight School. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Carole, and thank you for inviting me. It's awesome to be here. I'm tickled. It's great.
So what are your thoughts? I mean, you've been so instrumental in helping me understand and shift my perspective when it comes to all the things that I've brought up here. What in your own life happened, and what changed your way of viewing things from seeing that there was a victim and that all those horrible things were either happening to us or we were the ones creating it?
Well, I think the first thing that came up when you were sharing that the beautiful stories before I came on, I was thinking to myself, and I think we talked about this before the show too, I think that we all, and for me, I'll share a couple of stories from when I was little. There's one particular one that came up as you were sharing about my dad and I, but, in the end, it requires that we all sort of decide, am I an agent of righteousness such that I'm going to sort of push everybody away and judge, or am I a bridge builder? Am I someone that's going to build bridges so that I bring greater understanding where there's misunderstanding, where I'm willing to talk when I don't understand, where I'm willing to ask questions where I don't understand. I'm willing to, like you did with the bully, willing to be curious as to what's going on. What if every polarized situation like that, Carole, is really just a situation of deeper understanding is being asked for? So I gave you a little story. Can I share a story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is one of those moments
I love
you
your
asked
stories.
me about. So this is one of those moments you asked me about. So in my whole growing up, my dad was like a complete type A perfectionist. His dad was an engineer, and his dad ran away from home. So my grandfather ran away from home because his father was an alcoholic and was in a horribly abusive family. I mean, I think it was heinous. But he never, we got the idea that it was bad, but we didn't realize how bad. So my grandfather mustered up the courage to leave, but he had no way of knowing how to have a good family or be a good dad. So he was like, he did his best. I'm sure my grandmother didn't enjoy it very much, but he did a much better job than his own father, right?
Right.
So my dad, and just to give an idea, my dad was like, he coached the Belgian national hockey team. He was like called up to the, whatever you call it, the farm league of the NHL and of the CFL. He's like a scratch golfer. I mean, he's just naturally, unbelievably, ridiculously sports talented, right?
Right.
And his father never went to a single game, just to give you an idea, right?
Ouch. Yeah.
So it's
That's
just
rough.
I know. So my dad perceived that the reason he wasn't coming to the game is that my dad had to try harder or be better, right? And so when I was growing up, for him it was always all about getting it perfect so that he'll be loved. Well, of course, when I would try to help him in the basement at 4 years old with a little hammer trying to, put up that ugly wood paneling we all had, and some of us still have. So, like, I would whack nails in crooked. Of course, I'm 4. I whacked off the end of something he just meticulously jigsawed around the hearth of the fireplace, and he just blew his stack. And of course, right? Because this didn't just mean not getting it right. It meant not being loved by his father. It had every repercussion. But that's when it started to be passed on to me. When I started to polarize with my dad, started to see him as the person that was being righteous, that his way was right and my way was wrong, and the only way to get his approval, never mind love, was to at very least figure out what he wanted and then spend the rest of my life that way, right?
Right.
Which I did. I got straight A's in school. I was very independent, didn't ask for much, quiet, didn't cause a lot of trouble, didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do any of that stuff. And then I went away to university, still didn't do any of that stuff. But I realized, I took a program, I remember back then, I took this program, you're supposed to write a letter. And what I had done is I stopped just telling my dad anything about my life. I started withholding it because I didn't want to hear the judgment or that I didn't get it right, because I was trying to figure out from my survival instincts what is going to make me be able to survive this life. So I kind of held him as the enemy, or, this person that was taking me away from me. But in this program, like, talk about stamping my feet, they said, Jennifer, if you want to do the homework is you got to write a letter taking full responsibility for the kind of relationship the two of you had. And I'm like, well, do I want to be close? Like, do I want? And like, I say this, Carole, because it's a question we should all ask. Do I want to be right that he is a total pain in the butt, and I'm going to be right, but I'm not going to have my dad close to me? Right? Or do I actually want to build a bridge and figure out what the heck, like, everyone wants to be, there isn't anyone that, even the worst terrorist you could think of doesn't want love. They might be completely misguided in how to gain acceptance, right? But, and terribly misguided and heinously misguided, and some, you go down the grease line slippery slope, and you end up doing things that you never thought you would do at 2 years old, But for me, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, no, I would love to, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So I wrote this letter, and on the way back to the program the next morning, I'm like, okay, I got to read him the letter. I had to read it the night before, but it was midnight, and I went, maybe I won't have to read the letter because it's so late, and he won't answer the phone. So I'm just, I was trying to get out of it, basically, right?
Yeah, of course.
So the next morning I wake up and we're in traffic, and I'm like, oh my God, I have time to phone him on my cell phone. And I was freaking out. And I was praying that my mother would answer the phone so I didn't have to talk to him and share all this deep, dark, stuff. Yeah. And my dad, I swear to God, Carole, for the first time in his life, picked up the phone instead of my mom.
Wow.
Of course. Right? Mm-hmm. And I go, hi, Dad. He goes, hi. I go, Dad, I'm in a course. And he goes, oh, you're not in another bleepity bleep course, are you? And I'm like, oh, God, please. And then I'm like, all right, just breathe. And I go, Dad, part of my homework is to read you this thing I wrote. And he goes, okay. And I didn't give him any preamble. And basically what it said, Carole, is, I love you and I miss you in my life, and I feel like sometimes you don't approve of me, and sometimes I feel like it equals you don't love me, and that I'm not okay. So I don't share a lot of things with you because I'm afraid you're going to get angry, and I don't want that, and I'm sorry I withheld myself from you. That's the Reader's Digest version, right? The abridged. Yeah. And what he responded to me, so it's quiet for 30 seconds. It's the worst 30 seconds of my life. And just quiet, nobody's saying anything. Then he goes, Jennifer, Candy, I still have a hard time saying this. Jennifer, now he's never told me he loved me ever. He said, I could not, okay, I got to breathe. I could not love someone as much as I love you. Sometimes what happens is I blow up, but I want you to know that I come to realize that when I blow up, about 3 minutes later, I'm over it, because it's just something inside of me that I don't know why I do it. But I want you to know I just come back around to just that I love you. So I couldn't be prouder of you. So you just do whatever your heart calls you to do, and never mind when I blow up. So this is like 29 years old, and for 29 years, I've been wondering what's been going on, and I get this amazing explanation, and I'm crying, right? And I'm thinking, God, why didn't I do this even 10 years ago?
Well, and the reason is because it takes so much courage to do that. Like, even when you talk about having a bridging conversation, like, how would you describe that as opposed to just confronting someone and saying, like, what's the difference between a confrontation and a bridging conversation? What was in that letter that made him be receptive? And as someone that's maybe willing and wanting to have the courage to have those conversations, what can you say to that would give them the courage? Because there's always that fear of, what if they don't receive it the way your father did?
Well, I was really coming from the place of, I want to build a bridge. This isn't about me being right. I'm just taking responsibility for my part. I'm responsible for how I'm 100% responsible for my 100%, and I'm not blaming you. Right? That's really where it has to come from. And of course, ever since then, my dad tells me he loves me every time we hang up the phone, Carole. Like, that's unheard of. So now, but the problem is, dude, I remember another story, and you were saying that you really like this particular story. It's like about maybe 15 years ago, just before this amazing horse whisperer guy, who's a dear friend of mine. Just before he passed away, I don't know what came over me. I've never done this before, but they had been through so many financial and legal troubles, and they had the most beautiful piece of land and the most amazing horses, all with natural horsemanship. And just, I love these people. They just followed their instincts every step of the way, and that's how I learned to ride horses. So I find out that, everything's falling apart, and they've got to sell the ranch, and and I just said, okay, we're going to do a barn raising. And I went, what? Who said that? And I collected all of their friends, all of the people from, the horse community. Even Canadian Tire decided to donate, we had all the nails and the hammers and everything to paint the fences. Everything was donated, and we raised a ton of money, and we must have had a good 50 people there to fix the fences. We even got equipment. I mean, it was so special.
Right.
But I had this guy who was the husband, who's like a very jaded businessman, who was so skeptical of everything I did. I think it's because she took Get Out of Your Own Way, and it really opened her heart a lot. And she came home, and he was like, what is this voodoo? It's weird how people get skeptical of love, right. Because they're jaded, right?
And scared of change as well, even if it's a good change.
Totally. And he wrote me the most scathing emails, and it didn't matter how much love I poured into the email reply. It didn't matter. And he was not, like my father was open to it. This guy had no commitment to building a bridge, and he didn't. So people don't, so then you have to be willing to, one of the hardest lessons for me is some people just aren't going to see you. They aren't going to get you. There's no amount, and you'll feel with every bone in your body, I'm just going to drive over there and he can talk to me and see I'm not this person he made up in his head, you know?
Right.
And that was one of the biggest lessons, because I knew if I called him my enemy, or if I polarized that, what I had to do is I just had to give it up to creation, God, the universe, whatever it is that you call that which makes stuff and loves things back into congruency. You know, I just had to give it up. And that's probably one of the first times where, you know, I was miserable for 6 weeks, Carole. Like, I just held onto it. This is like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I just held onto it, and it made me miserable, which, of course, polarized more people, blah, blah, right? So it doesn't serve at all.
Yeah, that brings up the question of how we can see that happening on a bigger scale with things happening all over the world, and how do we reconcile with seeing just crime, seeing abuse, seeing all those kind of things? How do we find peace, and how do we know we're doing enough? What gets a person to, I mean, I'm asking too many questions now. What gets a person
well, I mean, the problem is, like, if you're an agent of change, if you're someone that you're here, like you, Carole, or me, you're here to build bridges. You know, you're here to make the world a better place. There's a certain point at which you become a martyr, right? Mm-hmm. You carry the world on your shoulders so much that you become a martyr. And I think there's some certain amazing people in history who've already done that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really don't think it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't get you a closer seat to God in heaven. It just doesn't.
Well, and what I find too is if I let myself get pulled into everything that's happening, I saw myself do that as a child. I would watch can't remember the name of the show that they would show all the children in Africa, and I would just feel it all. I would just feel the pain, and at what point, how does that serve? Like, we can only do what we can do in our immediate life, and can we know that that's enough? That if we're showing up being the best version of love that we're capable of, does that affect the world? Does that affect that child in Africa? Is that good enough?
Well, of course it does, right? Of course it does. So, you know, gosh, there's so many examples of this. So one might say, you know, but what about, you know, ISIS? Aren't they the enemy? Or isn't there something wrong over there? Or what about Donald Trump? or
let's maybe not go there. Yeah.
No, we won't go there. But or whoever your version of that is, you know, your own your own personal person like that, right? So what we start to do is it's a protective mechanism, right? It's a protective mechanism we have. The part of us that forgot that it's a divine child of an infinite universe, the part of us that forgot that, you know, whatever that's we never get more, you know, the universe never delivers us more than we can handle. Right. So the fact that we can even see those things and we can take those in, it's very hard when you're little, and it's even hard as an adult if you don't know how to sort of marry with those, with being divinely guided, let's say, with, you know, really being able to understand that if not you, then who, right? The entire universe is conspiring for more heaven. It's in a conspiracy. So as we connect to that which we perceive would cause more heaven, like, you know, right now a friend of mine called me up, and she's got this amazing project, and it's so simple what she's done, but it's flipping brilliant. And what she did was she saw all the governments that are not helping third world countries with water, and they found a really inexpensive way to clean the water. And then she connected with the manufacturer of that, and then she created a charity around it, and she's got this amazing model to have 1 million people have clean water for 10 years.
No way.
Yeah, way. Actually, I'm going to put it on my Facebook page. So all you guys have to do, anyone wants to play. Yeah, it's $50. All you have to donate is $50, and she has this whole methodology. So, for instance, she said, Jennifer, I would love you to be one of the leaders of this. And I said, okay. And when she told me how it worked, I went, oh, my God, that's so easy. And wow. I could totally see how 1 million people could have clean water for 10 years. See, she's guided. It's just like brilliant. And when someone is divinely guided, you feel inspired. Like you just want to assist them somehow, right? And so she could either be right about, she's done a lot of work in Africa, and for a point in her life, she was very mad at some of these governments that are just basically sucking the money away from being able to, she's just very judgmental and very upset and felt very disempowered. But all of a sudden, she met with a couple of people who were inspired people, just like she's inspiring me. She met a couple of people like she is to me for her. And she started to see there was a way of building bridges, and it didn't matter. She didn't have to be righteous. She didn't need the self-righteous energy of how bad the world is and how these dictators are taking all the money and da-da-da-da-da. That will never get you inspired ideas. That just being angry and being upset is not going to build any bridges. It's going to disempower, give you less energy, and that is not where the universe lives. That's not where God, creation, whatever you call it, lives. It lives in the energy of what's possible, not what's not possible. It's always in the energy of what is possible.
Yep. Would you say in that space you're also letting yourself get pulled into that energy as opposed, which prevents the flow of inspiration to make change? Like if we're stuck in the fear of it and the anger of it and the frustration and all of that, do you think it also prevents us from connecting to being inspired like this woman has been?
Well, think of all the people, or maybe a couple of people who can get self-righteous, or just think about the times where you've been self-righteous.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I myself, it never happened to me.
Never.
No, joking.
No, not you, but everyone else.
Right. No, I definitely was very self-righteous with my dad for 29 years. Well, probably 26 years, right? Probably loved him unconditionally up until about 3. And then lost it.
Right.
But anyways, if you think of someone or yourself, a way that we get self-righteous, think of how much energy you have. We actually do, there's an exercise, Carole, I don't know if you remember it, but there's this exercise we often do in Get Out of Your Own Way, and it physically shows you what happens to your energy when you are in a state of judgment and being angry and being righteous. And what happens to you is your energy depletes to like a tenth, your physical energy. So imagine you walk around being self-righteous. I mean, that energy is creative life source energy. You just literally pinched off creation, right? And so now, even if you did come up with an idea, you've got a tenth of the energy of when you're coming at it from. And remember, God, universe, creation lives in the land of possibility. Right. So in the land of possibility, it's like, what? There's got to be. If an acorn can grow to an oak tree, there has got to be a way. And then you allow yourself to be shown. And all your energy is not going towards being righteous or being against something. So this is the distinction, Carole. When you're against something, it takes effort, and it's against the flow of all of creation. When you're for something, when you're for something, like you're moving forward, you're looking for answers, you're looking for solutions.
Mhm.
You want to build a bridge, you want deeper understanding. When you're for something, you'll have all the energy in the world.
And that creates an opening to receive inspiration,
Totally.
Yeah, and even what you talked about earlier, just how we're not given more than we can handle, that statement can really, I know at one point, several points in my life, I'd be like, I think I'm being, God or the universe thinks that I can handle more than I actually can, because it just felt like too much was coming at me, and it was too much to bear. But I can see now that so much of what I was taking on, like you talked about putting the world on your shoulders, taking the world on your shoulders, that's what was going on. It's like I was taking on everyone else's, the problems that were beyond my control to even take a step forward into it. And it was all out of love and caring for this one who's ill and that one, but so much of it was entangled with worry that is why it was too heavy for me to carry, because it wasn't mine to carry in the first place.
So the paradox is, right? The paradox is that why am I carrying my mother, the illness of my grandmother? Why am I carrying this person who did this horrible thing? Why am I carrying some other nation's government? Why am I carrying, I was just looking on Facebook at, for some reason, a whole bunch of people in my world are posting things about elephants, and the mistreatment of elephants in the world. And, I've been to Thailand. We went to one of the only retreats in all of Thailand where you don't ride the elephants and where they don't tie them up. They're rescue elephants. They're elephants that were beaten and maimed and all that kind of stuff. And they're actually set free into this retreat rather than chained up. It's the opposite. It's like they were chained up, and she buys them from the former owners who had beaten them and then sets them free into this retreat. And you do get to come up close and personal because of the beatings, these elephants are familiar with human beings and behave a certain way, unfortunately, instead of instinctually. They've sort of been but the stories are like horrible.
Horrific.
But let me give you this. Can I tell you the story of one elephant?
Absolutely.
His name is Mado, okay? And it's talk about a moment. Talk about a bridge building. So this elephant had been beaten into submission, like most of the elephants that are in servitude over there, and it's pretty awful to witness. And then what had happened is they had forced an elephant that was like 3 times its size to mate with her, so her back leg broke, and it never got repaired properly. And then she has dysplasia in the other hip because they were forcing her to do something else, and then she has something else in her front leg, so she hobbles around, right? So you watch this beautiful big elephant, but she's like crooked everywhere. And it's all from human beings. So we could say, those Thai people, but no, it's, that's just how they survive. That's what they figured out. It's like breaking horses. We do the same thing here, right? People do that all the time. So it doesn't make it right, by the way.
No, I
but
get it.
It doesn't make it wrong either. It's just what has been happening, right? So, it's survival for them. The same way we rode horses when everyone first got here. They had to have horses to do you couldn't be a pioneer, blah, blah, blah. So that was their version of it. And so this elephant Mado, there was the beautiful person that we both know that went on the trip. And she had been through probably the same version of abuse, just as much abuse, just in human form. And that elephant exhibited more of what I'm talking about than any human being I've ever seen. because all of the elephants had a mahout because the elephants are roaming free. So there was someone beside them, but instead of a person beating them, in order to raise money for this retreat, which ultimately she just wants to be able to set them free in a piece of land that she's purchased so that the elephants can just be without people at all. That's what she wants. But in the meantime, in order to raise money, she's built this amazing retreat, and part of it is being amongst the elephants, so they all have mahouts so the elephants don't stampede you, because elephants have a very protective, matriarchal, so there's rules about being around elephants, just like horses. So then what happened was this woman was sitting on a piece of cement, and somehow, this beautiful elephant that had the pulp beaten out of her over the course of her life, and now she's safe, comes up to our mutual friend, and Mado puts her forehead on this woman.
Right.
And somehow it's away from the mahout, right? So it shouldn't be. And Mado comes right up to her like, I get you. I see you. It's okay. You can get through this. And you can just feel the communication without the words. And so...
Wow. That had to be powerful to witness.
It was ridiculous. I still have the picture that she sent me of it.
Yeah.
Just absolutely amazing. But imagine that elephant doesn't perceive that human beings are her enemy. Imagine that elephant maybe even had some of those things happen just so she could have a moment like that. And I know from talking to my friend Joelle, who took us on this beautiful voyage to Thailand, that Mado does that at least once a trip to somebody, find someone.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? So
that's incredible.
Imagine that we're that we are that. That's what we are. We have the potential to build bridges, no matter how yucky what happened to us is. And I can't believe that elephant didn't just become a maniac. It didn't get schizophrenia or whatever version of elephant disease that is. Didn't just go wild. But instead, we keep being curious about what is my piece of the puzzle of heaven on earth. Why am I here? What bridge am I here to build? And that's a very different way of being on the planet than how do I survive this life? Because that will make your whole life all about you. It's me, 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 me. When you make it about me, 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 you're going to protect yourself, and you're going to find enemies, because you're going to find people who are you're going to perceive everything that happens that makes you very uncomfortable as someone doing something to you.
Right. You'll keep finding evidence as to why you need to protect yourself, and therefore you close your heart. You're not just closing your heart from being hurt, you're also closing your heart from being loved.
And, absolutely, and what if that person is in your life because they're a catalyst for you to be able to lead and stay in your heart no matter what's going on, and if you did, their whole life would change, and that's your job. What if the universe never sends you anything you can't handle, and never sends you anything, just like with Mado, all that stuff, and we could say, Mado could say, all humans are horrible, or how could my mother have left me to these terrible humans? How could my mother have done that to me? Or my father, or, what is but the elephant didn't do that. The elephant is like, I'm going to use that, like my history, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to use it to build bridges, no matter who I'm leaning up against. I'm building bridges. I don't even speak the language, and I'm going to build bridges.
Wow. That's incredible.
So,
what a story. I
know, isn't it? It's crazy.
I think everyone needs to just breathe that one in, because it's like, wow. It's incredible just to see an animal be able to show so much, and just the flow and the purity of the love that came through her was an instrument of healing for that friend of ours to be able to move through and keep going through life. So as we're all just taking a breath, I just wanted to remind everyone that you're listening to our Expanding Forward Blog Talk radio show. We're interviewing Jennifer Hough today, and you can join us every third Monday of the month right here at Blog Talk Radio /Expanding Forward. If you follow our page, you'll get an email reminder for upcoming shows. And for those of you on the phone today, if you have any questions, you can press 1. Feel free to call in and ask any questions for Jennifer or myself. And there's also the chat room that's open, so anyone there can write comments or ask questions. So we go from quite a powerful experience that you just shared with us. If you're okay, I wanted to kind of flip it to the other side and talk a little bit about the perpetrator, the one that seemingly can be the enemy or the one that causes us pain.
Well, Carole, I was going to say, too, sorry to interrupt, I was just thinking about, as I was talking about Mado, I was also thinking about, you remember the guy who, here I was, like, putting myself way out there and just, that horrible barn raising, and we had so much fun and so much love was poured out. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It was just, I felt so good. And everyone did. It was just such a great day. I'll never forget it. But that guy, it's people like that, as long as you're talking about perpetrators, it's people like that who've been the most hurt. They're the most, people who are the most jaded and the most biting are the people that believe that they have the most evidence that you can't trust. You can't trust others. That they couldn't possibly be that loving. They couldn't possibly be that brilliant or that smart or that giving or that generous of spirit or that whatever it was that he was thinking. He just wanted to prove me to be a fraud no matter what. And there are those people in the world. The more loving you get, the more you put yourself out there too. And I'm saying this for you too, Carole. The more you do that, the more expert bridges you're going to be asked to build. There's going to be some bridges you're going to have to build, right? And some people are just going to collect evidence for their righteousness no matter what, and the skill that's needed in that case is to know who those people are. It's not even to know who those people are. Know who the people are that you haven't yet developed the skill enough to bridge it back, or that's one option, or know where those situations are where this is just listen closely, everyone, because that's not the only option. The other option is know who those people are, that it's going to be more effective to change the world around them.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right? So, be you everywhere else in your life, and through 6 degrees of separation, it's going to catch up to everyone.
It affects everyone eventually.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, for example, like a sexual abuser, a murderer, like dictators, like just really extreme or very difficult individuals, difficult to forgive their actions. Like, what can you say on that? Like, what did it take in that individual's life to get to that place of forgetting to that degree of who they are?
Sure. What do you perceive forgiveness is?
Well, and the question is, the next question was going to be, is there even room for forgiveness? So I would love you to, is there any reason for forgiveness when we can understand that individual, is it to the degree that individual was hurt themselves, or was shown at a young age that they couldn't trust, or that they build up protective mechanisms so thick that it separated them from who they came here to be. Would you say that that's what takes us away? I mean, and can we all be that? Are we all, as much as we have the potential of being limitless possibility of love, do we not also have the potential of being the murderer or the perpetrator or the dictator?
Of course we do.
So?
It just depends, right? It just depends on if you came into this life with the coping mechanisms, if you just are innately gifted with the coping mechanisms when things hurt, to still remember that ultimately you're going to be okay. It's when your survival is threatened and maybe you sort of have one of those younger spirits, less experience with being able to cope with these kinds of things, that to get your power back, the only option seems to be anger, hurting someone else, raping someone else. You know, it's the only option you can see that you have is to hurt, so that you can feel more powerful, which the cool thing is that in some level you know you are powerful because you're trying to get back to that. It's simply the way that we're going about it. Now, some people hide and take themselves, some people take themselves out of the game of life. They just hide, they just survive, they go into the shadows and all that kind of stuff. But I think the most important thing with your question, Carole, is, ultimately, we could be any of that, but given that our brains don't get schismed and that we don't become somehow so hurt that it basically cuts our connection with all of creation to such a degree that you just can't even see that it's all love at all, like nothing's love to you. You can't even reach for that. So to the extent that we still got a little bit of hope, I guess. Then we might look at forgiveness as a tool, but I want to go back to the forgiveness as an idea, as a concept. See, what I believe, and the people that listen here don't have to believe this. You can believe whatever you want. But what I have seen in my dreams and what I feel to be true is that our souls have had many, 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 many lifetimes. And we've been in training, And as our souls have had many, many lifetimes, we've been the perpetrator, we've been the victim, we've been everything. The only common theme that's happened over the last several thousand years is that we've forgotten. We've forgotten that we're a divine child of an infinite universe. We're a divine child of God. We've just forgotten. And because we've forgotten, we operate from limitedness. We operate from the idea that somehow we're limited, somehow, God is not on our side, somehow the world is not okay, somehow you have to fight for things, somehow someone else is going to take everything away from you, somehow people are against you. And then what happens is we get into this dog-eat-dog mentality where mine, yours, mine, yours. And before long, so the way that I sort of see the hologram of our history is that we've all co-created in the times we've been here before. We've all been part and parcel in creating this world where we've chosen to forget. We've created the environment by remaining a victim. We've created the environment by being the perpetrator and not recovering from that either. We've created the environment by still being afraid, even though we're a divine child of an infinite universe. And it's not about blame, but if we've all been part of it, then what's there to forgive? The only thing for me is action. Do something. Be nicer. Right. It's like in your every day. Now, from that place, can we, the first place to start is, can I forgive myself?
Right. For all the times that we are not love and we contribute to a world that isn't. Yeah.
But even forgiveness is like this polarizing word, Carole. I'm going to use a different word. I'm going to say, can we have compassion for ourselves?
Right.
And can we have compassion that, there's this woman, she now works for us, by the way, but I remember when she initially did Get Out of Your Way. Her name is Kristen. She is a love bug. I love her. And she had an amazing upbringing with an amazing life and amazing parents, and she wasn't afraid of boys, and she wasn't afraid of dating, and nothing really stressful or traumatizing happened too much to her. And, she bipped along, and, she might have been divorced once before, but then she married this wonderful man again, and, she loves her kids, and she's just bipping along, right? And when she did Get Out of Your Way, she had no idea what happens to people and the schisms that are caused by the horrible things that happen to people, which, by the way, is most of the population, having taught Get Out of Your Way for like 12 years now or something like that, and having tens of thousands of people come through the program. But there are people like Kristen, too, who had like great life. But one of the things that happens is she was always judgmental of people who did what, in her eyes, were like stupid things or unconscious things or thoughtless things, but she didn't understand how much it affects and how deeply it affects people unconsciously who are never given the tools to transmute what happened to them. And what happened to her was a tremendous amount of compassion and a much deeper understanding of herself and of people. And in doing that, it's just expanded her heart, right? And now she, even though she was already a tremendous love bug, it just made her even more so. But you see how that deeper understanding, people could judge her for being judgmental, maybe.
Right.
But then all of a sudden what happened through deeper understanding is she's like, nope, it's all about, I don't even need to forgive those people. I just need to have compassion for myself for not understanding, and compassion for everyone else for like how hard that must have been. See, now we can do something because there's a bridge. We just built a compassion bridge.
And it completely removes anyone from being a victim at that point, would you say?
Bingo, including yourself, right? You're not even a victim of it. So forgiveness is a good first step, but when we can get to compassion, now we're talking. It's just a bridge to compassion. If we can get to that place of compassion, by the way, it doesn't mean you have to hang out with your rapist or accept the behavior. That's the other thing that I think I need to make very clear.
Yeah, it doesn't make the action okay. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it, No,
it's not okay. It's actually super not okay, which is what keeps me inspired to continue to bring more. All of those kinds of events that I hear on TV, they catalyze me to emanate more love. And
when you say catalyze, it's like it pushes you, it like motivates you?
Yeah, I would say that when I, look at third world country, every time we do a trip, for instance, Carole, you've been on them. We did something for a beautiful school in Peru when you were with us, and on every trip we do something to give back, right? So, but when we see what's going on in those communities, you could get hopeless. And instead of getting hopeless, just do something. And if anyone can do one thing, anything can do one thing a day. Anyone can buy a sandwich for someone on the street. Anyone can, even if you just donated $1 to, the World Wildlife Foundation, or if it's absolutely anything that gets you back in your heart to contribute, is affecting change in the whole world, so I think
it also fully removes the idea that there's separation, like what I couldn't see with that bully on the swing beside me, that he was from one category and I was from another. I was like, no, we're all the same. It's just we all have different human experiences, and from there what it looks like is I love the idea of compassion, because it just brings so much reverence to everyone's unique journey. And from there, it can just take our focus away from wanting to see that someone is wrong and I'm right, because that's just an illusion that there's security in that idea, that I'm on the right path. No, how about just what's my piece of the puzzle of heaven on earth, like you always say. It's like, what did I come here to do? And to be preoccupied with everything else that's out of my control takes me out of the game of my own life. It completely prevents me from showing up fully. And it's a very handy distraction from the ego's perspective to not look at my own self and like, how can I be a better person? How can I be of more love and emanate more love?
Well, and if we extrapolate that even more, even though this might sound like an airy-fairy conversation, like, come on, you guys have rainbows coming out of your butts, please, right? But I just want to say, like, imagine the difference between, I remember having this amazing flippin' conversation. Still to this day, I have to phone this man again. I love him so much. He was probably one of the people that led the charge for Global Earth Day. Like, he was a leading visionary. And I met him down in California. My friends Brad and Matt were down there, and I met my friend, really cool friend Toddy, and we all got together, and this guy was there too. His name was Mark. And Mark's like 6'4", big guy. And but he's what other people might call like a total tree hugger, right? He's like Greenpeace, total, very like an activist, right? And I would say I'm sure he was quite militant in his day, and he probably still was quite positional when I met him. But I remember talking to him, and this was at the beginning of me figuring out my piece of the puzzle of heaven on earth. So here I am, little old me talking to this 6'4" giant with huge vision who's done amazing things in the world, right? Who am I? So I'm standing there, and this is like, 12 years ago, and I'm standing in front of him, and I look up at him, and we're in the middle of the desert, beautiful house in the middle of the desert. We're about to go on a hike, and we're talking. And he said, but Jennifer, don't you understand? People are out there killing whales. I said, yeah, I get it. He goes, I've been on the boat. I said, wow. He said, don't you understand what they do in Japan to, corral the dolphins? And he said, it's horrible. It's so inhumane. And I'm like, yep, I get it. He goes, don't you understand that, like, just the pollution and what's happening is everything's being dried up, and there's a whole political party in this. He's going on and on. There's a whole political party in my country that doesn't even believe that global warming is happening, right? So he's like, everything he's saying is against something, against something, against something. And I said to him, Mark, I don't think you're wrong, though, because he could see that I was really struggling with the conversation. I said, I believe you're not wrong. All of those things feel completely incongruent to me. I totally get it. But it's the way that I am called. I totally respect the way you're called. But by you co-creating Global Earth Day from love and compassion and showing people what they can do, you got me on board. Like, I wasn't, environmentally, I was more ignorant than anything. It wasn't because I was against anything. I just didn't know how to be of service to planet Earth, to, Mother Nature. And I said, that gave me an excuse, and I'm, like, so grateful for that. You mobilized me. I said, but as soon as I watch all this other stuff that is against, and militant, and against, all you're recruiting is the people that are militant. But you're not recruiting me. You're not building a bridge to me. You're making me not want to play with you. Right. Because I want to be in my heart. I want to. So look, every year, Global Earth Day, all over the world, right? Huge Global Earth Day, all over the world. Look at what he did. And so he said, even this fire was started by, so the fire that had wiped up the desert around us, he said the fire, it's so dry and everything burnt down, and someone just threw out a cigarette, and that's how it all started, blah, blah. And he was getting militant again, right? But then what happened was we all go for this hike, and this guy wears flip-flops on a hike in the desert, okay? That's the kind of guy he is, and he does this all the time. So we're out there. I've got my hiking boots on, of course, and we're out there, and we're walking, and he goes, this is what he says. It happened 5 times, Carole. He goes, and that plant there is the coolest plant. You see how there's a little sprout coming out, despite the fact that its origins burnt down? He goes, that's because the roots are so far underground that no matter what burns on the top, it will just regrow as soon as the next rain comes. Oh, and that plant over there, that one, when it burns, is the only time the desert gets seeded with its seeds, so when it rains, it'll just grow back. Oh, and that plant over there, it doesn't even matter because the exoskeleton, like the outside of it, burns, but the inside of it stays alive, and you'll see that it'll just get green on the outside eventually in the next 2 weeks anyways. And then that plant, and he just went on, and I'm laughing to myself, right? I'm laughing because I thought, Mark, human beings are not the enemy. Mother Nature, creation, is so smart that Mother Nature will kick us off this planet, and has been trying to, because we've been acting without love, and we'll be extinct. You know, just like global warming will cause everything to flood and people will die because we went unconscious. We're a me world, and we don't care how much we're ruining our partner, which is nature. And I said, but it's not about being against the people that are doing that. It's about being for this communion with nature, right? And that's the conversation that we had. And it's a change in our it's the same thing as all those people that committed crimes. I just watched this whole show about black men being put in jail in the United States at a ridiculous rate. And we talk about they're bad and they're wrong and they're this and they're that. But the recidivism rate is ridiculous because they're not, it's called the corrections. But we don't correct, right? So, and then all the movements to start to correct, right?
That's incredible. Yeah, I love that. I just wanted to let our listeners know that we are at the 1 hour mark, just to honor everyone's time, that we're probably going to go over maybe like another 10 minutes, would you say, Jen?
Sure.
Or so?
Sounds good.
And so I wanted to just extrapolate on what Mark was saying about the plants, because what I saw in my mind is like, doesn't that describe us as human beings as well? That the fire could be like representative of the challenges that we get that come into our lives, or the different situations that can cause us pain or difficulty, and how we are resilient like those plants. Like we are made to face the fire, and we get purified in the process. And it's not to look for suffering so we can have the badge of honor of the superhero martyr, but to just embrace what does show up in our life. And the second we stop judging it as such a horrible thing and just try to see the beauty that can emerge from it, like a victim of sexual abuse that can take that and become someone that coaches people on that have suffered from that as well. Or, I mean, the list goes on. And I really, like when you were describing those plants, I was seeing us. I was seeing the beauty of our soul that like really pushes through all the adversities we could be faced with.
The animal never sees the elephant did not see itself as a victim. The plants don't see themselves as victims. No. And we're part of nature. We're not above nature. We're in nature. And nature keeps showing us that we can, it's like our greatest cheerleader to me. You can do it. You can do it. No, you're more than this. No, it's okay. You can make it through. It's, all of that just keeps presenting itself. And we really, really have the capacity. You talked at the beginning, the title of the show was, loving your enemies. And the funny part about that is, my response to that is, define enemy. I haven't met one of my enemies yet.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping we would convert through the process of this show is, does that even exist? Is there such a thing as an enemy at the end of the day?
Even people that say they're your enemy, that say they absolutely hate you, they're a gift. It's happening for you. It doesn't mean you have to engage them. Doesn't mean you have to hang out with them. Maybe it does. I have no idea. But I remember this one woman, okay? I can't remember her first name now. She has an amazing institute for women. And I remember how earlier in my career, like 20 years ago, I definitely lived from scarcity, and I was playing the dog-eat-dog game. I was trying to figure out how to manipulate the system to, back then I was learning the sales techniques and how to create scarcity so people come and do programs, which of course we don't do anymore. But back then I was, and I remember this woman got really triggered by it. And the problem is I was really good at that. I was really good at it, which always made me feel bad, but I didn't know there was an alternative to, it was like survival instinct. I got to make people do my programs, 20 years ago. And I didn't realize how much I had pushed this woman's buttons, and I wondered why she never wanted to do business with me. She never invited me to speak at her women's groups. She never, what I spoke about was awesome, and what I did back then was so cool. But she never asked me, even though we ran in the same circles. And finally, I think I phoned her, or maybe she phoned me, but she could have been perceived as my enemy because she talked really badly about me, to other people. She gossiped about me pretty nastily. And I remember I had started making those changes in my life to, I can't keep doing business. I don't understand. It just feels so incongruent to be this way. And I remember she phoned me, and for some reason, and she said to me, I think I'm changing big time. And she said, I think you're changing big time too. And we had this conversation of deeper understanding that lasted 3 hours. That was just like the process and journey we had been through, that ended with, I'm so sorry if I caused you any, both of us saying that. Oh my God, so sorry. So was she my enemy? Or did that even drive the point home? Isn't she why we're even having this conversation, Carole? Isn't she one of the examples of how proving that you can build a bridge with anyone? If you might have to wait for cosmic God creation's timing, but there isn't anyone that doesn't want to return back to love. So, and I could give you tons of examples of that, loads of examples like that. But that, Tina, her name was, and I remember how hard that was, because I knew I was being judged. It was even I knew I was being judged all over the place, because people would come back to me and say, well, some people say that you, and I'm like, oh God. And my feelings would be so hurt. Yeah.
Now you can look back and see just how instrumental that all was for your own growth. Wow, that's incredible.
And I get to share the story now, and I bet you there are tons of people listening that have had, it's like you just get to, yep, totally. So,
wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, Jennifer. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. The work that you do it's powerful. It changes everyone that hears you. It can't not change you on a deep level. And I would even say, well, from my own experience, re-listening to calls with you helps me hear it on a deeper level. A lot of times we're only ready to hear so much of what's being said, and then you hear it again and you're like, okay, I get that better. I understand. I'm ready to hear that. And I just want to say, I don't know many people that are as genuinely invested and devoted to loving humanity as much as you do. And it continues to inspire me, and it's truly an honor to continue working alongside of you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Carole, because you're an equal inspiration to me, girlfriend. So I know what you've been through, and we've been through a lot of this journey together. So just kudos to you for having the courage to walk your walk. And so I know some of it's been really, really challenging. So just as much appreciation right back to you.
Awesome. So tell us, how can people reach you and what's in the works? What are your upcoming programs or trips? What's going on that's exciting? Because I know it's always exciting.
Well, one thing, and you participated in this, Carole, on Valentine's Day, what Adam and I, my sweetie and I did, is we made a stupid, silly, very silly video. And and we posted it on facebook.com/wideawakening, okay, if you haven't seen it. And if you scroll down, I think like 2 or 3, here is a little game we're playing. So I finished my 5 phone calls today. We randomly went through our phones, and we picked 5 people, totally random. You don't even get to pick them. And some of them are people I can't even remember how I met them. And you leave them a love message. You leave them a note of appreciation just for who they are in the world. And I'm going to read. Can I read one that I sent?
Yes. Just
to give people an example, because one of them...
Oh, totally. I would love that.
Okay, because I didn't even have, like for this woman, I didn't even have a phone number. All I had was an email address, right? So I said, oops, wrong person. Let me just see here. Yeah, here's one person. I can't even remember how I knew her. I said, it must have been a very long while since we met, because I'm having a hard time. But this email may seem a little random because that is exactly what it is. The only reason for it is to appreciate you, to let you know that sometimes it's not a me world, and sometimes people make up games called randomly select someone from your database and send them a good vibe Valentine's message.
I love it.
So you are the one of those people I selected. My sweetie and I made the game up. So much gratitude for everyone you've loved, everyone you take care of, all that you organize, and each of the kindnesses and thoughtful things you do in every day. Consider yourself Valentined with smiles, Jennifer.
Aww.
Yeah. So,
awesome.
Right?
Yeah, and I love
So I invite everyone to go watch the video. You can go to facebook.com/wideawakening, and that's one thing, just because that's like for nothing. Just come and spread some love. That would be.
I had such a blast. I did it with my kids, my older kids, and they were like, "No, I'm not." Okay, and then they're like, "Okay, I'm gonna send it." And it was a hoot. But it's like they were surprised to see the responses back, and yeah, I'm working on my 5 too. So yeah, that should be fun. So cool. So the
other ways.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the other ways to play. So the other ways to play are, we have an activation, which basically is just a really deep dive into the greater understanding of who human beings are. That activation, if you're not on our newsletter list, you can sign up at thewideawakening.com. And in the upper right-hand side, there's a place where you can get on our newsletter, which provides sort of a weekly, very short, can be read in less than 1 minute message that assists to give deeper understanding and more fluidity and ease in your life, so that you kind of let go of the things that are not working and move forward with ease and flow. So when you get that Be the Change activation, you'll also get those beautiful weekly messages, and in them you'll find out more about Get Out of Your Own Way. We've got a couple of programs coming up, and the next one is called Get Out of Your Own Way in Communications and Relationships. So that's all we've been talking about today, Carole. So if people want to join, if people already know they want to do it, they can just email Faye at officeangel@thewideawakening.com. But that's how you come and play.
Yay. Awesome. That's great to hear. So, well, thanks again, Jennifer, and thank you to our listeners. If you know anyone, family or friends that you think would enjoy this call, then feel free to pass on the link. The more people we get to start waking up, the better our world becomes. And then that's our part. That's our piece of the puzzle to create heaven on earth. So, we can be reached at /expanding forward on Facebook. And thank you to all our listeners in the chat room and to our callers. and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Carole. Awesome show. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Expanding Forward radio show with your host, Carole Lewitski. To find out more about Carole, you can visit www.expandingforward.com or check her out on Facebook at facebook.com/expandingforward.